Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland, and in this episode, we're going to be doing part 2 of the two-part review process that we're doing on the SimLabs P1 Black Edition Sim Racing Cockpit. Now, in this part of the review, we're going to be mounting all the peripherals, like the steering wheel, the pedals, shifters, and everything else that we're going to need to put this chassis in a drivable condition. And then we're going to go drive it, of course. So let's get to it. Now I'm going to be mounting these HPP PRXs to this pedal tray, and really there's a lot of ways to do this, and my pedals are already attached to an existing frame that I use, and the reason I use these frames is because I do a lot of reviews on different hardware, and it's easier for me to switch out things if I have my main pedal set that my go-to, if you will, for now anyway, mounted to a frame like this so I can just take it out. So I could have just taken these pedals out and mounted them directly to these 40 series profiles using a, now I could not use an 8mm because these PRXs on the back and the front where the holes are for mounting, they will take a 1/4 inch thread, or they will take as far as diameter, and they'll also take a 6mm. So I would just get some 6mm of these spring T-nuts that we've seen throughout the review. And you can get them in 6mm, 5mm, whatever you want, and use those to attach these pedals directly to this tray and then do what you want to with them from there. But because I use this frame, I'm going to do it a little differently. This is a 10 series going to a 40 series, so we have to either buy or modify the corner brackets for a 10 series. And I actually have some that I have now that are not modified, but I did before. I actually modified these, and all it required was drilling a bigger hole, and it's not the best looking hole, but it got the job done. Drilling a hole for the 8mm thread to be able to go through. It's not so much a distance thing by the way I'm connecting it. And of course we have the 10 series T-nut on the back there, the little economy nut that I meant to get a bunch of the roll ends for 10 series, but I just haven't got around to it. So pretty simple. All we have to do is insert our T-nuts into the channel so that it will accept the 8mm bolts that we're going to be using. And I have these little pan heads because the head of it's kind of shaped like a pan, and that's a 5mm hex head on this. Make sure that's focusing. It's a 5mm hex head with an 8mm thread. So we'll get this side set up. And I'm moving this forward just to get this bar out of the way temporarily, because once I have it in, I can slide it at will back and forth. So really not an issue. Gotta love these twist-in nuts. Now, I've already got the economy nuts on these brackets, so I can just take it and slide it through and get it to the point where I need to be. And as long as my hole's lined up here, it seems to be. And I've got 2 wrenches I'm going to need to use here because I've got metric and I've got standard screws. That hodgepodge, but it does get the job done. So I'll just snug this one up a little bit, which is a 5/32 on that 10 T-nut, and that's a 1/4 inch screw there. And then we'll just go ahead and get our 8mm going. Make sure it's lined up right. And that's a 5mm wrench on this. I think I'm just not quite lined up here. Move it back a little. And it looks better. And there we go. So that's really all I have to do. Now I can move this sideways. I can move it back and forth at will, and that's really all you really need to do as far as being able to attach the pedals. And I won't have to lift these up and improve the rake on the pedals. As you can see, they're about where I like them now. They're not completely straight up, but they are leaned back a little bit. So all we're going to do now is put the rest of these brackets in, and we'll come back and see how that looks. All right, so now we have the pedals mounted, and I'm able to loosen these 4 screws right here on either side, and these are 5/32. Remember, these are 1/4 inch ones because that's what I have for all my 10 series. They're not metric. And then I can, at will, actually move this around to go back or forth, whatever I want to do with it. And that way I don't have to mess with the 3 knobs on the other side, which could be used just as easily to do the same thing. And then once we're done, of course, we'll just tighten this back down. Now, I've never had these pedals ever move on me, or this pedal bracket setup. Let me put it that way. I had the HE Ultimates on a similar frame and just the same kind of setup, and it never moved on me, even when I was stomping on that really stiff pedal on the Ultimates for the brake pedal. So there it is. We have the pedals mounted. Pretty simple. Again, there's other ways to get this done depending on which pedal set you're using, but because I'm using these, I thought I'd just show you how I'm doing it with the HPPs. So next we're going to move on to going ahead and getting our seat mounted. That should be fun. So we'll get to that next. So now we've got the seat rail 40 profiles actually spaced exactly where I need them. And it turned out for a Sparco seat, and of course using these Sparco brackets that you can see here kind of have a curve to them. You'll mount here, but the actual seat bracket attachment is another 15 mils away from this because I measured it. So you want to make sure obviously that your seat is going to be centered in the frame. So once I had the actual centers on the rails themselves, which in this case turned out to be 350 millimeters, then I went over and made sure that I had an equal amount of distance all the way around from the side of this seat rail to the edge of this cross member. And easy enough to measure, and I got 55 millimeters from here to that end of that cross member over here that bumps up against this side frame. So as long as you got 55 millimeters all the way around, then we know that the seat is centered. Right, so now I've already got the T-nuts in the actual channels here, and they're spaced pretty much where I think I needed them to be. So it's just a matter of taking our seat brackets, putting them over the T-nuts, and putting in these flat hex head 8mm bolts we talked about in the previous segment. And there is a little wiggle room here, so once you have one in, you can kind of wiggle it back and forth and get to the location of the other one. Again, this is pretty easy, and it goes pretty quickly once we get to this point. And go ahead and put this one on. And I'm going into the 3rd hole from the edge over here and the 4th hole in the edge over here, just because. So now, once I get these loosely started, I'm not going to crank these down yet because we're going to put the seat in here, and you want this stuff to be loose like that once you have the seat in, so it's easier to get the bolts in the side of the seat. Now, just before I do that, though, I'm going to make sure that I am evenly spaced from the rears of these rails so that I know that the seat's going to be lining up on the holes correctly. You don't want one to be further away from the other this way, because if you have it that way, then your seat's not going to line up, and then you're going to have to do more work than you need to once you get it up here. So that's right at 70 mil on this one, and I'll just use that as what I'll put this one to, and that one's a little short, so now it's sitting on 70 mil. Right, so now we're equal there. Now it's just a matter of getting our seat and setting it in very carefully, trying not to scratch it up, which it gets scratched anyway once you get these metal brackets attached to the side of this fiberglass shell on here. But we're trying to minimize the damage every chance we get. And I'll just usually look down along the seat side here and get real close to this bracket that I can see and gently lower it in, because usually that means I'm clearing the other bracket if all my measurements are correct. And they are. Good. Now, what we're going to do is actually bolt the seat to the brackets. And what I usually do is put my hand under the seat and lift it up to the hole that I want to be on. In this case, I want to be on the 3rd hole. I can't be on the 2nd hole because then I don't have any clearance at all to get to the bolts that are bolting the brackets to these rails. And another reason why we're using the hex heads down there. So I'll just kind of get down the side here and pick up with my hand. And these seats aren't that heavy, especially if you're just picking up one part of it. And just get it started. Don't get it cranked down or anything. Just get it finger started. And then I'll go over to the other side and do the same thing. Can't see me do it over here, but it just takes a minute. Trying to keep everything even. Again, having everything loose makes this so much easier than trying to do it when it's tight. All right, so now all we have to do is get the front rotated back. And this is where, this is all personal preference, obviously, on how you want your seat. Now, this is pretty straight up and down here, which I typically don't like. I like to have a little bit of a lean back. And when I previously used this seat on other rigs, it was the third hole up where I liked it. Now I could go the fourth hole up and have it lean back even further, but that's about as far as I can go right there. But I also want to pay attention to the level of the back of my seat. Now I currently have a piece of foam in here that compresses pretty good once I sit in it. So it's kind of a, you can't really see where the bottom of the seat, my butt is going to be sitting basically. And I kind of want it to be about the same level as this plate on the pedals over here, because that gives you a good GT type position. Anyway, everything, like I said before, all this is personal preference, and your mileage may vary. All right, so now I'm just kind of rotating it back and trying to locate the hole here. See if I can get my bolt started. And there it is. And again, I can actually wiggle the seat back and forth or up and down to facilitate this bolt going in with just my fingers. So now I'll run around the other side and do the same thing. And this will be the last one. Typically they're a little bit the more difficult ones to get in for some reason or another. Here we go. That one's actually, it slid back on me. And there it is. Easier than I thought it was going to be. Now you can actually grab the seat and kind of shake it a little bit and really get these bolts snugged up pretty good with your fingers. And again, I'm lifting on the back corner over here, doing the same thing. Just kind of jiggling it a little bit as I'm getting close to being tight. Do it over the other side. And just shaking it a little bit. You can see how easy that goes in. And the last ones are up here. Right. So now we're still rattling because obviously the bottom bolts are still loose. And I don't know where exactly I'm going to have this seat relative to the pedals, even though both of them can slide now. And I'll just set it up to where I want it to be. And of course I have to keep in mind where the motor is going to be, or my wheel is going to be, and also where this shifter is going to be, depending on which shifter I'm running. So what we'll do next, actually, why don't we go ahead and get our shifter mounted. I decided to mount my Quaife ProSim Lite sequential shifter because I have a lot of tension on this, which really feels good when you're using it, but it also puts a lot of pressure on whatever you're mounting it to. So I thought this would be a good sample to use and see how the shifter mount assembly rather, works. And these flanges on this, in a lot of mounting hardware, the flanges aren't going to be big enough, or the holes aren't going to be big enough to actually accept those 8mm bolts that come with the kit. But SimLabs also includes this T-nut, a few of them actually, and these are actually 6mm T-nuts, so we can put this smaller or thinner 6mm thread right through this flange with no issues. And it actually does a real good job because the top part of the pan head here catches these grooves really nice. So all we have to do is put all our T-nuts on, and then we'll go over to the rig and mount it. So now we've got the ProSim shifter with the nuts on it, so it's ready for mounting. And all I'm going to do, and I've already got these spaced out where I want them to be so that they match the slots in the flange on this housing here. And it should be a very simple matter, just sliding them in, and hopefully they'll get started easily. There we go, there's two. And when I slide this across, I'm actually going to use a lifting motion on this to try to keep this flange from scraping up the anodization. Obviously we're trying not to do that. It's kind of like the theme for this build, because I have scratched it here and there a little bit accidentally. But it's not the anodization's fault, it's just, it is what it is when it comes to anodized aluminum, as I've said before. So we're just going to lift up on this and kind of just scooch it over to where it's basically centered along this rail. So that looks about right. So we'll go ahead and snug it down. Now, hopefully this is going to give us a nice solid mount for increasing or maximizing the tactile feedback that we can get from this shifter. If you're not mounting your peripheral, your wheel, your shifter, your pedals, whatever it may be, to a very solid mount, you're really missing out on the tactical feedback, or tactile rather, not tactical, tactile feedback that you get from something. Wow, that is awesome. That really feels good. And this is set up on a heavy setting. And obviously when you're sitting in the seat, it's going to be a little better than me on the side here trying to go straight back and forth, because all the forces are going straight this way and straight the other way in this whole frame here, including this upright. And you can see that there's no flex anywhere. Nothing's really moving. That feels great. Wow. Oh, that really is actually better than where I had it mounted on my Stage 4 rig. This is really solid. I really like this. Okay, so we've got the shifter mounted. It's looking good. I'm getting great tactile feedback from it. And what we're going to do next is I've got some special speakers I'm going to mount on this frame. And they're kind of roundish, kind of like I was trying to go for a rear view mirror look, but still have a high quality speaker. So we'll see what that looks like next. Here are the speakers that we're going to use to mount to our P1 frame. And they're kind of cool because they're round, ball shaped. And I was going for kind of a, I don't know, we'll see how it works out, but I was going to hang them on the tops there where the wheel mount uprights are and kind of get them looking at me, so they're kind of like rear view mirrors maybe. We'll see once we get them mounted. But they're very good speakers. They really sound great. 4-inch woofer with a mid-range in there, and very easy to mount. They're lightweight. And we're going to be mounting them with this system that I got off of Amazon. It's called SRG system. I forget exactly what it is, but they're $14.99 or $15 for a pair of these, or a set of these shipped. And that's if you have a Prime membership. And I really like these because they come with these. The system works as a very adjustable. This ball fits in here, and you can adjust this thing just about any way you want to by turning this thing around. It really does a good job of positioning your speaker. And inside of here, first off, we got this plastic ball, and you might see some dents on it already, little teeth marks, because inside of these two shells here, little clamshell kind of configuration, you can see they have some very nasty looking spikes in there, and of course both sides have those spikes. So of course the idea is put this in here and we tighten it up to whatever position we want, and then those spikes will bite into this ball and hold it very well. And these are not that heavy to begin with, but I'll actually use these to hold some energy speakers, some Logitech, I think 906s, but I've never had a problem with a satellite type speaker mounting them with these. So the holes on these are kind of smallish, so what I wanted to do was run some 5mm black that I just happen to have, some black caps instead of the silver 6mm ones, and because I'm trying to keep everything as black as I can on this rig as far as the color goes. Every chance you get, why not? So we're going to use these, and I ordered these special for this, and these are obviously spring ball T-nuts, and they're 40 series, but they're actually got a 5mm thread in them. So I can take these small 5mm cap screws, and then when we put these in, all we're going to see on the top of our mount is going to be the head, that black head of the cap screw. So it'll keep kind of an all black scheme going here for this mount. Right, so there's not much else to look at here. What I'm going to do is configure one of these, set one of these up, and these satellite speakers come with, like most do, with this 1/4-inch thread mount in the back of it. And all I'm going to do is take these threads obviously are threaded for this, and just kind of roll it up until I get a good amount of thread in there. And that depends obviously on how far down it'll go. I like to get it whatever it'll take in there. That looks pretty good, but of course I'm trying to obviously end up with it in between these two things here, the actual connectors for the cables. But what you do is, once you have it where you want it, and it's pretty far down in there now, is I'll tighten this wing nut. See a little wing nut on there. And I can snug that down. And then to get the final tightness on it, because the wing nut really doesn't get that tight, you can actually keep turning this a little bit after the wing nut gets tight. And then it's kind of a judgment thing then. I'll take it off again, I'll loosen the wing nut a little bit, and then try it again. And still not getting there. I'll loosen it the other way. There we go. So just so it's touching on here. Give you a better look at it there. And then I got just enough left on this that I can just take it like this, and that's nice and stiff and tight. And it's also directly between the pole connectors for my speaker wires. And these are little spring loaded units here. So this one actually is ready to mount now. We just got to get the mounts on the uprights, and of course I'll have a set of these on the back also. So next we'll just go over to the cockpit and see how these look once we get them mounted in there. Alright, I thought I'd just go ahead and give you guys a quick walk around on what these speakers are looking like now that we've got them mounted. I've got the back ones mounted on each side of the seat. Don't know if that's going to be where they stay or not, but for now that's where I'm going to leave them. If we go up and over here, where over the headrest and over the wing here, I have them pointing kind of in an angle towards my head. So we'll just have to see how that works out. And of course I've got the same thing over here with this speaker. So again, this is all subjective, and we just don't know how that's going to work or not. And I'll go ahead and get right on the headrest here and try to get down, if we can get wide enough, to show you how these speakers are going to look. And that's probably where my head's going to be, and my ears maybe a little lower. So that's aiming pretty well at my head. Don't know if they're looking like rear view mirrors, the look I was going for, but not too shabby, I guess. Could have been worse. Yeah, I'll just walk around here and show you what all this looks like. I kind of like it. I just wanted to go with something different than a rectangular speaker. And good speakers are paramount for the immersion when we're racing, at least in my opinion it is. So, not sure again if that's looking like a rear view mirror or not, but might be able to fool the uninitiated. So yeah, now we've attached our balls to our cockpit. We can say that this cockpit has some balls, huh? Right, okay, so the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and get our motor mount on and our motor mounted. Right, so now we've got the wheel mount installed and the motor, of course. And I've actually installed a steering wheel on here so that I could get a better idea of what angle I wanted the wheel bracket to be on. And you saw this in the build video, how this was actually mounted. Go up and over here. So it's a pretty good angle. It's a little bit tilted up compared to the seat. And of course, really the bottom line is going to be, once I get everything hooked up, the pedals and everything, and I'm sitting in it, I'll do some final adjustments then. But as you can see, this is a very nice direct drive mount. A massive 15 millimeter plate here. So yeah, that's a very nice solid mount. So we've got the wheel mount on, and I'm going to put the mouse mount on next. And I think we've got a keyboard mount we're going to be putting on this also. So when we come back, we'll just go ahead and put the SimLabs mouse plate on. Now the mouse mount, if you will, or mouse plate, whatever you want to call it, that comes with this is a nice crinkle finished aluminum plate. And of course we have two mounting holes on one side and nothing on the other. And it's actually 200 millimeters wide this way, and it's 240 mils long. So it's going to sit kind of like this if my arm was on the shifter, and that's going to give me plenty of room for my trackball, and also for maybe my remote control for my fan and the volume on my amplifier. Pretty simple affair, very simple to mount. We've come so far in this build that we know what's going to happen pretty much. We're going to use these 40 series T-nuts with a spring ball in them, of course. And this is actually supplied with the kit. And He's sourced some silver screws, the 6mm screws, and they're 5mm on the top for your wrench. But the silver screws in the black rig, you know, they'll work and they'll work fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just happen to have some of these 40 series T-nuts that are threaded for my 1/4 inch 20 pitch regular. Well, I use a lot of these on 10 series, but I actually have some 40 series T-nuts that'll fit this. So I was thinking that, seeing as how I had them, that will look much better than, and you can see it's a very tight fit here. It doesn't really want to go in completely, even though it's not that bad. And but once it gets to a certain point, you can turn it back and forth so it won't interfere with actually tightening up the nut. So, and probably it's that tight because of the powder coating or whatever is on here. It seems like I don't think it's anodization. It might be anodization. Yes, it's anodized. It's got this crinkle anodized finish. It seems like almost like it's powder coating, but whatever. Same thing though. Now we'll have some black bolt tops sticking on the rig, which I think will look a lot better. So that's why I did that. So what we'll do next is just go ahead and put our nuts on here, and then we'll slide it in. And when we come back, we'll take a look at, see how it's sitting. So now you can see we have our mouse plate mounted, and I really like the way the black screws turned out instead of having silver ones there, although silver ones would have done the same job, obviously. And you can see we got plenty of room on this thing. Got a big track ball in there, my fan control, and my stereo control for the speaker volume. And even got a little room left in between that. Maybe we could put a bottle of water or beer on there. But actually we have a cup holder for that, so we're going to put the cup holder accessory on and take a look at that next. So the cup holder is a rather simple affair. There's just this bracket, a couple of screws, and this bracket goes on with this part, the smooth part facing outwards. And we have some 3mm, as far as the hex wrench side, 6mm screws, and they're going to be going in some 6mm spring ball T-slots. Very simple. And then once this is mounted, you see these little pieces here, these little plastic pieces that are a little flexy. It's just a matter of taking it and sliding it over top of it like that, and then it'll just kind of hang there. And it's pretty big size. It'll hold, looks like it'll hold a pretty good coffee mug if you need it to. It's a beer bottle or a regular water bottle will be swimming around in there a little bit. But yeah, and it's got a little hole in the bottom, so if you spill something, it's easy for it to drain out. All right, so we're just going to go over and get this bracket mounted onto the, I'm going to put this on an upright, one of the motor mount uprights, and see how it looks once we get it on there. And now we have the cup holder mounted to the motor bracket upright, and I'm just going to leave it in the middle for now. If you put it on either side, first one side is going to interfere with my D-box actuator, and the other side might interfere with getting in and out of the cockpit. So we're just going to leave it there for now, but of course, being 80/20, it's very easy to adjust this stuff later on. So we got one more thing to put on. We're going to go ahead and get our keyboard mount put on, and then we should have this done. So now we have the keyboard tray to mount, and it's a pretty simple affair, but nicely done. It has a 10/20 profile on the back, which is two 10 series stacked together. And we have this hinge here that's going to allow it to rotate. It also rotates this way, but I've already got it cinched down at the angle I want it at. And you'll look on this, it has the anti-rotation tabs on it. And you'll see these two empty spots on the edges there. That allows you to pop these anti-rotation pieces out and actually put them in there in case you wanted to reorient in a different way with this hinge. Just one of those flexi hinges. You can see it squeaking a little bit. All right, so all we're going to do obviously is slide this down one of the uprights, and I'm going to use the left upright for this. And I've already got some Velcro attached to the tray part, this flat part. This is industrial Velcro that I got another piece on the back of the keyboard I'll be using. And you can see it's got some nice countersunk holes here with the screws that are actually lower than the actual surface here. Very nicely done piece here. So what we'll do is go over to the cockpit and slide this on, cinch it up, and see how it looks. Okay, all we got to do now is slide this puppy down into the front of the channel. Easy enough. There we go. And now as far as where this goes, I'm kind of guesstimating here. And remember, this has anti-rotation tabs that are in here also. So we're sliding it down to, trying to find the right point here where I think it's going to be. This looks kind of high, but we don't know until I get it affixed. And I'm going to use my 6mm wrench to snug this up. Like that. And there we have it. Now our keyboard goes in and out. Let me pull this out a little bit so you guys get a better look at it. And the cool thing about this keyboard is you can use it under the wheel, and then you can just rotate it out of the way like a door. And it goes all the way over here out of your way. And I'm going to get the keyboard and stick on there just to see how that looks. And you can see my keyboard has a couple pieces of Velcro on the back. And I just usually just kind of set it in here like this and then drop it back on it. Looks about right. Okay, and you can see it has a little bit of play here, and there's going to be a little bit of play to allow it to turn, but you can always tighten that up with a, I think this is a 4mm nut or screw right here, and you can tighten that if you want to. But you need it to have a little bit of looseness, and I kind of pick up on it when I turn it, so it goes out of the way like that, and you can get in and out very easily. So very cool tray mount. I really like this. You can do what you need to and get it out of the way, instead of it always hanging somewhere where it's kind of in the way but not really in the way all the time. Right, so that looks pretty good. Now that we got that done, we can get our motor mount and steering wheel system mounted up, and then we'll be ready to take this puppy for a drive. Now for some driving impressions for the P1 cockpit. First off, when you sit in this cockpit and it's in a static condition, obviously you're seeing motion in this video, but if it's just sitting there on your floor and you've had like an Aboto before or something less substantial sitting in it as far as your cockpit's concerned, all of a sudden everything is, you just feel like you're isolated from everything. It's just solid, solid, solid. It's just, and it's heavy, it's got mass to it. And when you sit in it, it's just, you're like isolated from everything, and it's just a strange feeling at first if you haven't been in something like this before. And all the mounting points are just rock solid. Again, just complementing the rest of this stiff chassis. And it's very important to me, and should be for most people also, that all of my mounting points for the motor, for your shifter, for your pedals, for your seat, and anything else you want to put on there are very, very solid, because it gives you more of a tactile feedback in your hands when you're actually driving the car, as opposed to a flexing mount. Like you see some rigs, and I've had them before too, where I had a Thrustmaster H-pattern shifter mounted to just like this 1/8 inch aluminum tray or something, and every time I shifted it flexed on me, the tray did. So that absorbed some of the tactile feedback that I was getting, or should have been getting rather, from that H shifter. Now when I'm driving this cockpit, everything, the shifter, the pedals, everything is just rock solid. It gives me great tactile feedback, and it just adds to the immersion or the immersive experience that you get while you're driving the car rather. So big points for that. And again, that's one of my pet peeves. I hate flexing anything. I always say that in my videos, because it robs you of tactile feedback. And again, the motor mount being also very important. This thing with a massive 15mm motor mount is just, again, solid as can be, and that means all of the, even the most refined and smallest force feedback input cues that we get can be felt, and they're not absorbed in the flexing of your motor mount, because there's obviously there's actually some flexing in the rim of the wheel. There always is. So that's something that we really can't eliminate, unless I guess somebody built their own and made sure. It would probably be so heavy you couldn't turn it anyway. But so again, just I'm really pleased with this rig. Like no flex in it anywhere. Everything mounts up great. It's perfect as far as getting myself dialed in as far as a seating position. And again, it's just, you can't go wrong with this P1 cockpit, or maybe something similar to it if you wanted to build one yourself. Using these heavy 40 series profiles just does the trick. And I'm actually happy with this rig also because, as you know, I have a D-box system on this, and I've been running it for hours. And after the first couple hours, I got out and checked all the fasteners everywhere, all the way around the whole cockpit and the mounting points. And there was a couple of them that were actually could stand a little snugging up or tightening up. But I wasn't quite sure if maybe I'd left them loose to begin with after the build, because that happens too when you got so many fasteners on a build like this. So anyway, after I did that, I've run it hours after that, and I go around every few hours and check the fasteners just to make sure nothing's coming loose. And I haven't even put blue Loctite or anything on the fasteners, and everything is still nice and solid and tight. So again, very happy with this result on the SimLabs P1 chassis. It's just one of those things when you get in and you get all your stuff situated and you get your perfect driving position, it's just very comfortable over long distances. I used to have a lot of back problems on my other simulator that I had because I just couldn't get it quite dialed in the way I wanted to because of restrictions of the actuators on the seat, and you have to kind of build everything around that. This is completely different because now we can build things to any dimension, any measurement that you want as far as distances and heights and angles. So yeah, a much more comfortable cockpit for me to be in. So I'm really happy there. You know, there's no reason to, you know, get out of your cockpit and have it hurting back or your legs hurt or neck or something because you just can't get a real good seating position dialed in. Anyway, so I'm just going to leave you guys on this ring for a while, and if you want to go ahead and fast forward or skip over to the final thoughts section, that's where I'll be next. Final thoughts on the SimLab P1 cockpit. Once I had everything mounted and was driving in this cockpit, the first thing that struck me was all the tactile feedback I was getting from my hardware. When you're driving in a cockpit that has the mass and stiffness that the P1 has, every little vibration you receive from the hardware you're using, it seems more pronounced, if you will. You feel more connected to the driving experience. It's just one of those things that you have to feel for yourself to give better understanding of what I'm talking about. Truly a great driving experience. And being made from 80/20 profile allows this P1 to be very versatile in its use and customization. It's easy to get your perfect driving position dialed in, where everything is within easy reach and you can do long race sessions with minimal discomfort. Also, as you may know, I mounted my D-Box kit to the P1 without any problems, and the cockpit handles those 400-pound actuators with ease. So I guess the P1 is SRG certified for D-Box applications. Now the black anodization on the cockpit does cost about $200 more than the equally capable silver anodized P1, But I do like the black frame more than the silver, but the black does require you to be more diligent when you're working with it. It's very easy to scratch both types of anodization, but the black will show more than the silver will. And now I've made the total commitment to buy black profiles now anytime I buy it, which, well, it tends to be more expensive than the silver. So yeah, it's something that you really just have to consider when you're thinking about getting a black or silver anything. In the end, if you're looking for a solid, easy to build sim racing cockpit, I would not hesitate to recommend the SimLab P1. I'm Barry Rowland, and thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel.